Some big-time 2025 prospects that the Badgers are in on. Can they get them? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in, giving us a little bit of your time. That's humbling and incredible. Thank you. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada. Go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. All right, let's get into it. Brian Smith joins the show. Fan favorite. Local legend among Wisconsin fans, for the most part. No, people love the feedback. They love the honesty. I get a ton of positive comments about Brian. Come on more. Love the honesty. And let's get some honest takes on a couple 2025 recruits that the Badgers are in on. Let's start with Maxwell Roy. Kind of an interesting connection there. Same high school as Emilio Agard, right? So the Badgers went there last year and plucked a pretty big time prospect out of there. 6'4"-ish, 270-pound defensive lineman, four-star composite player. Thoughts on Maxwell Roy?
This is the exact type of player that I've been saying since I've come on this show. I don't even know how many times now, that if you're going to beat Ohio State and Michigan, this is the kid you got to get. Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, I've all offered him. I mean, and there's just many more. They're in the mix for him, and they have a shot. And when you turn on the film, you can see why. He's extremely powerful. Can play one tech or three tech, and he can run over a guy that is as big or not bigger than him and get to the ball carrier in the backfield. Quite honestly, this is about DNA. I had somebody the other day at a 7-on-7 tournament, one of their other teams, he said, we won because of DNA, meaning their roster was just better. That's why teams that go to the college football playoff are also in the playoff. It's recruiting. This is the kind of kid. So he fits what they do at Wisconsin in their scheme, and he can play multiple roles. He could be your nose if you wanted in an odd front, or if you wanted to play head up, he's strong enough. He could probably put on 30 pounds. This is the kind of guy that if you're going to eventually ascend at the top of the Big Ten, you got to get. And you know what? They've got, like you said, with Agard there and now going to Wisconsin, you've got a connection, and that's a program that everybody recruits anyway in the greater Philadelphia area, St. Joe. So this is a good possibility for the Badgers.
I want to make sure, because a lot of people watch the show and everyone has different spots where they're at in their football knowledge, sports knowledge in general. When you say one tech, three tech, but let's talk a little bit about what you mean along the defensive alignment there.
One tech is your nose guard. It's usually the guy in the middle that you don't want to be footing the food bill for when he's off the field. It's somebody that's not on the lighter side of earth. This kid's not a big fat kid, but he has the frame to weigh 305. At the same time, he has the athleticism to play three tech, which is traditionally defensive tackle, one gap over from where the one gap, a gap is, whatever you want to call it. Everybody's got a different name. And he's probably, that guy is a little more athletic. He fits that now. That's where he primarily plays for his high school. They got other good players up front there at his high school. They got plenty of guys, and he can move around. But he can play either one, move around and make it a little bit more of a chess piece for somebody like Wisconsin that is going to run. Once they get enough guys, we've only seen a sample size of what Wisconsin wants to run. Mm-hmm. They don't have the personnel there. Like what they had for this staff came in just coincidentally was about as polar opposite of what they needed in terms of body type to what they're going to try to run. They want to play a one gap, get up the field kind of defense, but part of the time it's like 3-3 stack. And it's a lot of movement parts after the snap. Where they line up is not where they go through. They stun, and you're trying to get mental errors. You need athletes to do that. This kid can be the one power guy you leave in the middle and cause disruption, because if you don't double team him, he can walk somebody back to the quarterback. Again, that's DNA recruiting. Either you have that guy or you do not.
Yeah, one of the things on film with Maxwell when I was watching him, he feels like some of the dudes Michigan had on the defensive line last year.
Oh, yeah. Like in the last couple of games, forget the kid's name, Gladeway, 340 or whatever. Yeah. They couldn't block him.
Can't move him.
Yeah. When you have that guy, my dead grandmother can call plays.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. And that's the difference, man. Michigan wasn't going to win anything near what they did last year without their interior D-line. They did everything off of that because it was always 2nd and 9.
Yes.
It's brutal going against that. They were really well coached to give Michigan staff credit, but they also had guys that kind of hard to move. They had 300 pounders that were athletic and they were really getting after it. That's what Wisconsin's trying to get to.
Well, and one final point kind of on that discussion, your interior defensive line gets you into the pass rushing situations. They get you into third and second, and then you can unleash the other pieces.
I was at Auburn's practice yesterday, and they've got all these really young defensive linemen that are good. But the upper class defensive tackle situation is awful. They're going to, especially like the last 3-4 games of this next season, they're going to get run over. And there's not going to be anything they can do about it, no matter how good the coaching is. Because either you have guys up there, especially like the SEC, in the Trent, you're in trouble. It's the same thing in a Big Ten. At the end of the year, if you don't have depth at D tackle, it goes bad, real bad, especially if you got Ohio State or Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan, those kind of schools on your schedule. That's why it's so important. There's no way to scheme around it. Like you can scheme some things offensively, but defense especially is about recruiting.
Well, let's shift to another player, Byron Louis, running back. Another player where the high school has a bit of a connection. The Badgers went into American Heritage last year, got Xavier Lucas, the big-time cornerback. You and I have talked about him a ton. You've had a chance to talk to Byron Louis. Where does Wisconsin potentially sit in that recruitment, and what type of player is he?
I've known Byron for a couple of years. He's a kid that is at one of the best programs in the country. When he was a freshman going into his sophomore year, I was at a practice, and I had no idea who he was at the time. When you're at an American Heritage practice, it's one of those take a picture of everybody's schools, because chances are, even, like the FCS and up, if you're not going to play FCS and up, you're probably not starting there. Like all their kids that start go to college of some kind. And they had a running back who's now at Miami, who was their guy, Mark Fletcher, and he ended up starting at Miami as a freshman. I thought Byron that day was better than him. So this gives you a talent idea. Like this is an NFL player in terms of his raw skill. He's just over 200 pounds. He's lean. He's trimmed up. He was about 210. He's trimmed down a little bit, catches the ball well, but he is a downhill, old school Wisconsin running back too, if you want him to be. But he's, shall we say, developing into a more well-rounded guy. Florida State, Miami, Georgia, all these schools have offered him. Florida State and Miami have the best shot now because he's familiar with them. I know he's going to take OBs there. The third school he mentioned to me was Wisconsin, which was kind of random. And, he has to see it. I don't know if he's been up there yet, but as a general rule, two things. Number one, you need 2 visits to get a kid from far away. And 2, you've really got to hit the home run on the visit regardless, the OB. I think he'll take an OB to Wisconsin. I do not know if he's taken an unofficial or how far along it'll go. The other advantage for them is both Florida State and Miami, their list of running backs, both of them, like the guys they're going after, are elite. Wisconsin could fall into something, which I highly doubt they care, because it just depends on how quickly these kids commit. Excuse me. And Byron doesn't strike me as somebody that's just going to commit to do it. I was joking with him at the Under Armour camp. If you want, I'll go ahead and write this story that you're going to commit to Miami tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And just kind of like, because I know him, giving him a hard time. But I don't think he really wants to make an early decision. So if Wisconsin can get him on campus, we'll see what happens. But again, if they can get him on the campus twice, it would be a good sign.
Well, and I'll tell you this, man. Campus in summer, Wisconsin in summer on the lakes.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty cool.
It's a great spot. And they hit a bunch of home runs last year. Thinking about Dylan Jones, Darren Dupree, running backs who could have gone to Bama, who could have gone to a lot of places. They got them on campus. And to your point, it took Dylan Jones 2 visits.
That's just the way it is, man. That's any school. That's not a Wisconsin thing. That can be Southern Cal, Notre Dame, Miami, anybody. It's just more opportunity to soak in the information. It's a lot to take in.
The other thing with Lewis, and again, just watching film a little bit, and you've certainly seen him a lot more than I have, but running out of shotgun, it feels like a Phil Longo scheme fit. It just seems like it would be a tremendous home run for Wisconsin to be able to land a kid like him from that school for the second year in a row, and scheme fit and talent would also match up.
He can play in any offense now. He's that diversified. So is he going to play right away at Wisconsin? I don't know, but I'd be surprised if he didn't find his way onto the field.
Awesome stuff as always. All right, we're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show. Come back. We got commits to talk about, Bryan. One of them on the defensive line, which we have talked about forever. We're going to get into that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Nissan Motors. Listen, March Madness is coming up. Everybody's super excited about it. Our friends over at Nissan Motors are super excited about it. Each week, we're going to be picking one school, one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. Today's team of the week, the Tennessee Vols, can only be described as the Nissan Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch. They've created a lane for themselves, claimed the top spot in the SEC. And we all know about Dalton Connect as Badger fans. We saw him early in the year. That's an NFL dude, our NBA dude. He's carried the Vols all season, made them a team to watch in March. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada. Go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, Brian, let's keep going here. Let's talk a little bit about. I want to start with Torin Pettaway, defensive lineman, the Badgers' most recent commit, Wisconsin kid. You and I have talked a lot about the importance of in-state recruiting. 6'5", 260. Interesting offer list as well. USC has come in on him. Washington has come in on him. Thoughts on Torin Pettaway?
His recruitment I'll get to in a second, and what you just said is what I expected because of the West Coast teams now going to the Midwest to play game. We're going to see more back and forth with this, which is kind of interesting. It's more fun for me. But as a player, one of the first things I do, if I see a kid is a defensive lineman or a front seven guy, do they run track? Do they wrestle? Do they do baseball? Anything else? He plays basketball. Now, he's not unbelievable at it by any means, but A, that he's playing and not like just the last guy on the bench. And B, also just as important in many different ways, he has the length. Like you watch him spread his arms out, he's a condor. And he translates that to the football field. There were 2 or 3 plays like he jumps up and he knocks down the ball. And it's kind of the new wave with defense. Look, everybody knows that teams are going to throw more in today's game. So defensive linemen are trained differently. And that's also why they want more interior guys, generically speaking, that have length. You hit the guy that you can tell you have no shot. You wait, you look like he's getting ready to throw, and you jump up. He has that ability. Those are oftentimes the difference between winning and losing because that ball ends up in a linebacker's hands. You know what I mean? He's got a natural knack with timing and hand-eye coordination. The other thing is the frame. He's 260-ish. He can weigh 290 and be a 3-tech like we were talking now. I don't know if they're going to get Roy, but if you were to put Roy in the lineup and you put this kid next to him, whether it's at 3-tech and 5 or 5 and 1, whatever, they can do different things. That's how you start building the chess pieces that you need for Wisconsin, because they're going to run a lot of different fronts to try to confuse teams, and they need versatility because they might be going against a team that's running no huddle. If you don't have versatile pieces, it gets pretty dicey. They have to have guys like this. And again, as you noted, rightfully so, in-state. He's not an elite player, but he's got really good tools. This could be a kid that ends up being, and going by their history, an all Big Ten player. Wisconsin's made a living off 3-star kids that have length and have the frame to get bigger on the offensive line in particular, but to a certain degree, defensive line as well. If you're going to win big in college football, these are the kind of guys that even Michigan, like their D-line had some of these guys in the rotation last year too. They're like 3-star guys that Harbaugh and his staff coached up. It's the same kind of deal. So good for the Badgers, man.
A couple of ways I want to go with this. The first one is you mentioned not necessarily an elite guy. What about him? And I know it's tough to project linemen at times, but what about do you look at and say there's a tick or there's something missing right there when I compare it to the elite guys?
This is where many Wisconsin fans will probably throw rocks at me, but he's playing against a Wisconsin prep competition. A lot of the kids he's going against aren't very good, and I'm being kind. Mm-hmm. Like there was a few plays like he ran through scot-free. I'm like, what are you guys doing? I mean, it's just – and then the poor running back or quarterback got obliterated. He did what he should have, but it's to me that's not really a highlight. It's just fun. I'm sure he's just eating free cake there. But the other thing is when he's going against some of these kids, they don't have the same kind of height and everything, and he can see right into the backfield. He can chase the ball easier. That kind of goes along with it. And then finally, I don't know his exact position yet because to your point, he's not done yet. Mm-hmm. Is he going to be a strong side end? Is he going to be a defensive tackle? Is he a swing player? I would vote for the last. Goal line, put him at defensive end. You got 7 D linemen up there anyway, or whatever it is. I don't care. Third downs and stuff like that, maybe. But on 1st and 10, maybe he moves inside as his normal position and plays 3-tech. That's okay, though. These are the kind of kids that you're going to win with. This kid being an in-state player, it's going to mean something to him to have the W on his helmet, and he'll probably play really hard. So that's something that Bear Bryan always talked about. If he was close between two recruits, he always took the in-state kid because he thought they would give the maximum effort for the Crimson Tide. Kind of doubt it's any different at Wisconsin too.
No, I don't think it is. The Badgers have had a tremendous success with in-state kids, outperforming recruiting rankings.
100%. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned you were going to get into the recruitment in a second. I thought you brought up a really interesting point with the merger, the Pac-12 schools coming into the Big Ten, maybe some more cross offers. That's something I hadn't really thought of, but also just the fact that he has a USC offer with that new defensive coordinator, that new coaching staff that you're pretty high on. That feels like a nice validating point for his skill level where he's at right now.
It's kind of weird because, like, if you looked at the last 50 years of football, I'd put it at even odds they haven't signed a player out of the state of Wisconsin. Why the hell would Wisconsin be losing a kid to USC? They're in LA. They don't care what's going on in Wisconsin. It's got 20 million people in the area. So, yeah, it's weird, but at the same time, these people are starting to scout the area for, like, what hotels to go to and everything else. Like, literally, this is part of what goes on in the off season. Somebody probably said, well, hell, we're going to be up that way anyway. Let's look at these states and who can we recruit? And the rest is history. From now on, you're going to see USC, Washington, Oregon, and UCLA offer kids at a more, let's say, 50% higher level, I would guess, than they would. USC and UCLA have always spot recruited everywhere. Washington, not really. Mm-hmm. Oregon here in the last 5-10 years has kind of gone nuts with Dan Lanning recruits everywhere. But again, like Washington, they don't recruit in the state of Wisconsin. But now they're doing the same thing. They're all looking at Chicago. They're all going to be looking at Detroit and Indianapolis. Those are the mainstays. A little bit in Ohio. It's hard to recruit out of Ohio, but go recruit there as well. You're going to see more overlap. And these kids know that those West Coast schools are still now Big Ten. It's still weird to me, by the way. Probably always will be, because I always thought of the Rose Bowl. That was always something I looked forward to my whole life. And, West Coast team, Big Ten team. Let's watch the game. Whatever. The point's still the same, though. It's the best teams are all in one conference now, so they're all playing each other. You're going to see a kid at some point from Chicago go to USC, then play at Camp Randall. It's going to happen. So that's just the new age we're in.
Well, let me ask you this. It feels like, and I think you hit on it, but converse, the opposite of that's also true. Now, everybody recruits California to some degree.
Oh, you have to. You have to.
I feel like Big Ten schools maybe more going to Washington once in a while, or Oregon, or hit California even more now because of that connections there.
Here's the thing. I was talking to a buddy of mine about this the other day. If you're an LA kid and you're at least open-minded about leaving 20 years ago, there was a chance you went to Notre Dame or Florida State or something. They've always recruited out there. But with them being in the Big Ten now, all these kids, UCLA and USC, like the LA kids, there's not a Big Ten team that's even like Minnesota could get a kid from LA. Mm-hmm. You'd have told me that 3 years ago, I'd have said, look, there's all kinds of drug rehab programs that you can go into. Okay. They are not getting kids from there. You know what I mean? Like I literally told a kid from Florida the other day who was like in a cold weather situation, his teeth were chattering at a tournament. And I said, man, we're going to set you up to go visit Minnesota. You're going to commit. He looked at me and acted like I was on drugs. Like there's just certain kids that just don't go to certain schools. Yeah. Where are they going to go? They have to travel no matter what. If they go to SC, UCLA, Oregon, or Washington. And let's be honest, the elite kids from the LA area, if they were going to the Pac-12, it was one of those four almost always. Stanford was kind of the other possibility. But that's it. So now you're looking at, well, I'm going to be traveling there one way or the other. I'll at least consider it. Wisconsin, Michigan State, all these schools that probably would get like one kid a year, maybe some 3-star kid that didn't get the offer from UCLA they wanted. Now they can get guys that everybody offered because their parents are going to be in the Midwest all the time anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be really unique. I don't know the volume of it because there's no precedent. Like literally, we have no idea how this is going to finish. But something that I'm going to track is like how many LA or San Francisco kids, even San Diego, at least take a trip to a Midwest school now. I think it's going to go way up because it's just, there is no Pac-12. Doesn't matter to me. My footprint has been erased, literally. So it's unfortunate for them. They don't have a West Coast option for it sucks. But the Big 12 will also benefit. The Arizona schools, if they do it right, and I don't know if their administrations will, they'll suck up a lot of those kids too. They could be competing as much with Wisconsin as anybody if those kids are willing to leave the state because it's still at least the West Coast.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're going to take one more quick break, come back with we're going to talk about another front seven defender that the Badgers recently landed in, Sam Lateju. We talked to his coach. We're going to talk to Brian Smith about his film and what he thinks of him. Coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Amazon Fire. Amazon Fire Stick. Now, listen, if it's gotten so complicated at times, right? Trying to figure out where am I going to find this program, that sport. Amazon Fire TV solves basically all of this. It's your sports destination. Amazon.com/lockedonfire. All of your sports, basically everything you want to see. Amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs. You plug it in. The user interface is incredible. They recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos of your favorite sports brands, all for free. That's right. All for free. Once you have that Fire Stick, you plug it in. That includes all of us at the Locked On Network as well, including most pro sports, college conferences. Keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. It's all there. You have to check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked it out, you have to. Trust me. I have mine. It's incredible. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. That's www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Let's get Bryan back on here. Let's talk a little bit about Samuel Lateju is how you pronounce the last name. Here's another kid, big frame, right? We talked a little bit of Torin Pettaway, the frame. Samuel Lateju, also a player. Raphael Dunn in last year's class from that same high school out in New Jersey. What do you think of Lateju, watching him on film and seeing kind of the physical tools?
First thing is how long he is at the hip. He reminds me, before the movement even started, the first thing I said is, this looks like the kind of frame that Georgia would recruit. Now, he's not quite as twitchy as somebody that's a five-star kid out of Atlanta, but the tools are there, and he's a physical player that probably plays the run. It's kind of ironic, even better than he does the pass. Most edge guys, it's just the opposite. From what I could tell, their scheme is pretty conservative. They want to make sure they keep everything in front of him. But once he hits the gas, he's pretty good athlete in space too. But really long arms, and he has the ability to close and finish. He gets to the ball carrier and brings him to the ground. He's not one of these guys that just runs past people. I think he's a pretty smart football player. Now the question is, what position does he end up playing? As a general rule, conservatively in today's world with all the nutrition you have, remember now, they got nutritionists on campus. The strength programs are ridiculous. You're going to put on 25 pounds pretty much no matter who you are. The kicker puts on 25 pounds. It's ridiculous. He's 230-ish. I don't know if he'll be able to play stand-up end or not. That's a possibility. But at worst, he's going to be a strong side edge. And you can never have enough of those guys. It's a really hard spot to play in college football today. And he fits that. The length is there, again, to jump up, knock down passes. He will be able to recoil and re-step his feet and get out into the flat after a screen ball. Anything like that it's totally different what I evaluate now because everything's in space. These offenses want to do everything to wear out defensive linemen. It's their objective. You see screens early in games, that's not by coincidence. They don't want to deal with 3rd and 8, that guy just pinning his ear back. They want to wear him out and have him huffing and puffing. He's a good enough athlete to make that still work. And again, he's physical. So it kind of fits old school Wisconsin in some ways, but I think he's got more upside. Not necessarily a 5-star kid again, but this is basically how Wisconsin is getting bigger and longer, and their defense is going to benefit from it. I'm curious if they can finish out this class with like one more guy like Roy or something, because then these guys don't get double teamed either. They still need that anchor on the interior that's just, I'm better than you. That's still the one piece that changes college football teams, but they're closing in, and I didn't even expect at this point, just as an overall look, for Wisconsin to be getting guys like this. And like Pettaway is a kid I really like, but, he's in-state. To get these kind of guys from New Jersey because Syracuse and all these other programs are closer, that's a good sign for the Badgers too.
Well, and one thing I want to kind of finish up with on Lateju, and you mentioned it, you said he looks like a pretty smart player on film.
Yeah.
He's a kid from Nigeria that's only been playing football for 2 years,
right.
Which you watch him on film and he's playing the read option pretty well. He's understanding the assignments. I think that adds to the upside here because this is a kid who's basically just a raw ball of clay.
That's a really good way to put it. I don't think their scheme allowed him to really play downhill much. And that might have just been the competition they're going against. Anytime you play option teams, it's designed to do just that. They want you to think instead of run. And he did a pretty good job of it, but it does mitigate pass rushing, at least to a certain degree. The other part of this, and it's just part of football in general, how many different positions can he learn and all that? He probably played just primarily one spot, I'm guessing, from watching his highlights, and that's okay. Wisconsin might, because of their scheme being multiple with 4-3 and 3-3-5 and all this different stuff, they might ask him to do more in the long term, especially depending on how much weight he gains. This could be a kid that's a really key chess piece, because if you can play 2 or more, again, it goes back to that same point I made earlier in the show. When teams go tempo, you can move guys around, and when they spread it out, maybe he drops into coverage. If they go 2 tight ends instead of like the tight ends out in the slots, he can bang and take on guys in the run game. Got to have versatility, and he has the frame to be able to do that.
I love it. He is Bryan Smith, Locked On's recruiting insider at FBScout_Florida. We're always smarter when Bryan's here. So thank you so much, as always. For everyone tuning into the show, thank you so much, as always. And we'll talk again tomorrow on Wisconsin.